And we're back from the park. That was a long trip. We were there almost 2 whole hours, Kaiba. Well, 1.5 probably, factory in travel. No footage of today's trip, just because phone needed to make sure I had enough charge left to come back and do this video. And also because somebody isn't feeling super well today. His tummy isn't agreeing with him. Poor little pucky. It's okay. You have a little rest. Did I make the video? Okay. Good morning, Magic Players and color collectors of all kinds. Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to apologize for today because there will be a little bit of noise interference as I do need a fan on. And there's a solid chance that I may have to lower my voice at some point because right now my father is just out for a walk. And I don't know when he left. So there's a solid chance he'll get back before I finish this. But I wanted to show you guys my spirit deck for our Super Deck Sunday. I've only been talking about it for like 2.5, 3 months. So I figured I kind of owed it to you guys. But in tradition of the channel, because it's always fun to do things like this, I'm going to do Secret Commander today. So as I reveal the things, we will see, as I reveal the cards, we'll see if you guys can guess who the commander is. Now, for a heads up, it is a 5-color spirit deck, as I've been promising I was building. So that means, you know, there is certain limitations. And it is, in fact, a spirit that is in the command zone, hence why I am using, as my #1 go-to land, Path of Ancestry rather than Command Tower. That and I just felt Command Tower didn't feel quite right for this deck. Instead, I actually decided Exotic Orchard might be a better fit for this deck. I'm going to be definitely seeing most of the different kinds of colors that I need in other people's decks. And while this is a 5-color deck, to be perfectly honest, if I could have found a Mardu legendary spirit that I actually liked, it would have been the commander. I really didn't need blue and I really didn't need green, but blue and green added some interesting things to this deck. So we'll see those when we get to them, though. We got ourselves our 2 classic fetches, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic. Just because, you know, it's hard to find some basics sometimes. I went with 5 of the Tri-Lands: Crumbling Necropolis, Mystic Monastery, Opulent Palace, Sand Steep Citadel, and Arcane Sanctum. Why did I go with those 5, you might ask? Honestly, just because I didn't want to use Painbow's land base for this deck. I wanted to save that for my Dragon deck. And I figured that these 5 were ones that I had extras of, so. I'm also running 5 of the dual lands that come in tapped and give you a life. So we've got Bloodfell Caves, Tranquil Cove, Scourged Barrens, Thornwood Falls, and Rugged Highlands. Just to try and get all the colors each couple times. Again, even though this is more of a Mardu heavy deck, don't get me wrong, I wanted to make sure that I had enough of the other colors presented just in case I needed them for my commander, for example, and other things. So, I have a couple of these swamps from Kamigawa. Basically, if it was a Kamigawa land and I had enough of them, I put them in this deck. A few other neat swamps that I like the artwork of. I went with 5 basic swamps. 6 basic plains, I believe I went with. 3, 4, 5, 6, yes. 5 mountains. 2 islands and 2 forests. Again, this deck is not focused on green and blue that much. I will say there is more blue than green for sure. Mostly, though, that's counterspells. And there's a few creatures that actually made a really nice synergy with the deck I built, so I tossed them in too. Alright, let's start with the enchantments. Hopefully it focuses. We got Feast of the Victorious Dead at the beginning of my end step. If one or more creatures die this turn, I gain that much life and distribute that many +1/+1 counters among creatures I control. In this deck, there's going to be a lot of things dying and getting reanimated. That's kind of the goal of this deck, is to just keep bringing things back from the dead constantly. Because spirits don't die, which is the name I'm going to give this when I put it onto Arcadeck. Spirits don't die. Or spirits won't die. One of the two. I haven't decided for sure which way. The Long Reach of Night is a pretty cool card. Each opponent sacrifices a creature unless they discard a card for the first two, and then it comes back as a 0/4 with Menace. And whenever this thing attacks, it gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in defending player's graveyard. So whoever I attack, the amount of creatures in the graveyard determines how powerful this thing is, which is pretty cool. Otherwise, it's just a big dud. Unless I put some +1/+1 counters on it, of course, with the other enchantment. Dramatic Finale. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1, which is going to be very important in this deck because there's going to be a lot of token nonsense. I forgot I should put copy tokens in this deck. Oh well. And whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, I create a 2/1 white-black Inkring creature token with flying. So just gets me some extra bodies on the board whenever something dies, which, again, in this deck, the plan is to have things die quite frequently. It's going to be very combat-driven to a certain extent, because I want people to attack me and I want to attack them, because I want to be able to do the really neat trick that I basically built this entire deck around. So next I have the Kami War. This is one of those spells that requires the blue and the green, so hence why we needed a 5-color deck. Exile target non-land permanent opponent controls, then return up to one other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Each opponent discards a card for number 2, and then this thing comes back as a 6/6 Okagachi Made Manifest. It's every color, it has flying, trample, and when it attacks, defending player chooses a non-land card in my graveyard. I get to put that card in my hand, and this thing gets +X+0, where X is that thing's mana value. So, no matter what, I'm at least getting +1, but the more important thing is, I get to return things from my graveyard to my hand, which is really good for this deck. Crackling Emergence. Enchant a land I control, it becomes a 3/3 red spirit creature with haste. And when that creature would be destroyed, or the land would be destroyed, I sacrifice this thing instead and the land becomes indestructible. This is one of those ones that I had an extra copy of a room, and I thought this is definitely a better deck. I could have put this in the Dragons deck, and part of me might regret this later on down the line. Maybe I'll get another copy of this from a store when I go to build that Dragons deck, we'll see. But I really like this one because I can unlock the Dazzling Theater and then all my creature spells have Convoke. But I can also unlock the Prop Room and untap each creature I control during each other player's untap step. So it's like a half, what's that card called? Shoot, I had it in my head before I wanted to do this video. Because I was going to put that card in this deck and I actually ended up not putting it in here, ultimately. It's going to bug me if I don't figure it out. Give me a second. I know where that card is, at least. Seedborn Muse. That's what it is. Good. I didn't have to find it. Seedborn Muse. That's what I'm thinking of. It's like a half Seedborn Muse. I don't get the lands back, but I do get all the creatures for blocking, which is really important for this deck again, because of what I want to do with it. And finally, an Oath to the Grey Host. Opponent and I each get a food token, then each opponent loses 3 life, I get a treasure, and then I get to make 3 white spirit creature tokens. with flying, but they come in tapped. Still though, pretty solid. Get some extra bodies on the board, do a couple extra things, why not? Next we have the artifacts. For the most part, I wanted to do some land fixing and some mana fixing with this because the deck does only have 34 lands, I believe it is, which isn't terrible in terms of decks I build, but it is still probably considered terrible in terms of a 5-color deck. So I added a Soul Ring, the only extra one I had, which I figured why not? Soul Ring, Soul, it made sense to me. Arcane Signet for the mana, and then I have all the 3 obelisks that I currently own that I'm not using in other decks. I put in Esper, Bant, and Naya. So I get at least black and red once, but I can also do green twice, blue twice, and white with all 3. So lots of extra land fixing there per se, which is good. Moving along to sorceries. This is actually one of my favorite sorceries, and I'm going to set it aside to explain why later, but in this deck, this sorcery is insanely cool. So for each creature, its controller sacrifices it unless they pay X life, so I can pay black and X to make this cost us, say, 5 life per creature, and then everybody will have to decide what creatures they really want to keep and which ones they're going to sacrifice so that they don't lose the game. It is the only board wipe I'm running in this deck as far as I remember. Not Forgotten, put target card from a graveyard on top or bottom of its owner's library, and then create a white spirit creature token with flying. Chances are I'm going to be picking my own target card from the graveyard, of course, but doesn't matter. I could put someone else's if I wanted to do some politicking. The important thing is I get the extra body too. For 2, that's pretty good. Angel Fire Ignition. I eventually want to build a mono white deck, and if I wasn't building mono white angel, I would definitely be adding this into an angel deck, but unfortunately the angels I want to build is definitely going to be mono white. There's only one angel I have that's red and white, which is still a pretty cool card, and I'm going to add into something, just not that deck. So anyways, this card is insane. For 3, you get 2+1/+1 counters on a creature, and that creature gains Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, and Indestructible, and Haste until end of turn. And it only costs 1 extra mana to do the flashback, which is equally insane. If it was instant, that would be like the most overpowered card I probably would have in this deck, but at sorcery speed it's still pretty damn good. Revoke Existence to exile an artifact or enchantment, again at sorcery speed. Unbreakable Bond is a great sorcery to get something back from my graveyard and give it lifelink. Reconstruct History is an insane sorcery in this deck too. I can return an artifact, enchantment, an instant, a sorcery, and a planeswalker from my graveyard to my hand. And then I have to exile this. But I mean, for 4, that's an insanely good thing. Plus, I get to choose those targets. Like, I don't have to do an enchantment, for example, if I don't want to. Or I can take one of each of those things on the list if I choose to. So it depends on what I need, but still a very resourceful card. And then Rise from the Witch King. I do have one Planeswalker in here that I wanted to get back out, and this is a great way to do that. I can sacrifice a token, which I'm going to have plenty of spirit tokens in this deck, so that's not going to be an issue. And that way I can get that Planeswalker back out if I want to. Or another permanent if I need something for one of the combos that I want to do. Moving on to the instants. I like this one. It's just a 1 cost that lets me automatically get a creature onto the board if I need an extra blocker, for example. Same with this one. Just another great way to get an extra blocker out for 1 cost. Just in case I'm getting hit for too much damage or what have you. Sacred Fire is a fun one because it has flashback like that other spell that I played earlier. And just deals 2 damage to whatever I choose, and I get 2 life. Unmake is fun. At instant speed, I can remove a creature from the game. Cut the Earthly Bond, I can return an enchanted permanent to its owner's hand. That one's in here more for flavor, to be honest. Same with this one. Well, actually, this one just makes sense. This costs 1 less to cast for a spirit, and if I control an enchantment, it also costs 1 less, and it counters a spell unless the controller pays 3. Lightning Volley, I have one other thing in here that's going to give me a similar effect for a turn, but I really like this card just to give all my spirit army a chance to just like tap and attack. Rather than attacking for a turn, I can just tap and deal a whole bunch of damage. And then that enchantment that I showed you earlier with the room can untap all my stuff so I can block with it if I need to. Negate for the counter of a target non-creature spell. Dawn's Truce is a great way to protect all my stuff. Same with Safe Passage, because I want to keep my spirit army, like, as much as I want things to die, I also want to protect the specific combo that this deck is running, which we're going to get to when I get to the creatures. Naturalize, just to get rid of an artifact or enchantment, and Utter End to get rid of anything, essentially, that isn't a land. A lot of things there just to do removal at instant speed to help protect me from anything that because I'm not running as much counter magic, it's more to kind of deal with anybody who's becoming too powerful in terms of combat. If you have any guesses on the commander so far, I'd love to know what they are. Put them down in the comments at this time, because once we get into the creatures, it's going to be pretty obvious which one it is, I think, once a few other creatures get removed from that possibility. So here we go. The reason I built this deck is I pulled these two cards when I was doing a couple different openings on the channel before, and the insane combo that comes from this is really cool. Basically, all my creatures that are spirits are going to get +1/+1, have trample and haste, which is great in the first place. But the better thing is, whenever a non-token creature I control dies, except for him, I can exile it. If I do, I create I exile it. When I do that, I create a token that's a copy of that creature, except that it's also a spirit now in addition to its other types. And it has the stupid ability that whenever it dies, or whenever it leaves the battlefield, I get to put the exiled card back into my graveyard. So essentially, back a couple months ago, I told you guys about how I was building a recycling deck that I really had a lot of fun with. In terms of, what was the commander of that one? I forget what the commander was of that one. But it was, now it's going to bug me if I don't look it up. This is why I do all my videos right beside my collection, so that I can always just look up things when I make these little statements and I can't remember, because my brain has a brain fart. Myrkul, Lord of Bones. My Myrkul Lord of Bones deck is a recycling deck, and this is very much a similar idea. What I really like about this, though, is a lot of the creatures in this deck are going to have ETBs, and whenever I create that token, it's entering the battlefield, so it's going to trigger its own ETBs again. In addition to that, once it becomes a spirit, though, it is now covered by this guy. And this guy's ability is whenever he or another spirit I control becomes the target of a spell, that creature phases out. So it's not being exiled, which is nice. It's just phasing out and phasing back in. And then whenever this or another spirit I control phases in, I get to create a tapped white spirit creature token with flying, so I just get an extra body on the board for getting things to phase back in. But in addition to that, if I understand phasing, I don't think it works the same as exiling, so I don't think I get the ETBs in extra time, but if I do, let me know in the comments if I'm right, because I think I might, and if I do, that would be really cool. Either way, though, still an insane combo that I wanted to build a deck around. I essentially originally was thinking that I would make these two pair commanders and try to rule zero this deck as often as I possibly could when I want to play it. But I just felt that I would never get people to really be convinced that that was fair based on what else is in this deck. So ultimately, I decided that I would just put both of them in there and hope that they will be protected by some of the other cards in the deck, like some of the source or instant speed spells I have, and my commander. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Next, I have 3 elephants. The Planeswalker, Quintorius Field Historian, and Quintorius Lore Master. So, the Planeswalker version, whenever I cast a spell from exile, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and I gain 2 life. +1, I get to make a spirit. -3, I get to discover 4. And -6, I exile any number of target cards from my graveyard. I get red mana for each card exiled this way, and then I can play those cards this turn. I assume I have to pay the mana cost, but still, pretty awesome. The Field Historian, all my spirits are going to get +1/+0 from him, and whenever 1 or more cards leave my graveyard, I get to make a spirit. So essentially, if I trigger this ability, it's going to trigger that ability and give me at least 1 spirit. Not that that's super good, but I'm just saying there's a whole bunch of other things that move stuff out of my graveyard too, as you've seen earlier, so it's kind of the idea. Move stuff in and out of my graveyard constantly and get spirits. This guy has Vigilance. He's the toughest of the 3. At the beginning of my end step, I exile a non-creature, non-land card from my graveyard, and I create a spirit. And then I can pay 1 red and white and sacrifice a spirit to choose a target card exiled with this, and I can cast that card without paying its mana cost. But if that card would be put into the graveyard, it gets put on the bottom of my library instead. So again, recycling. But again, exiling stuff with him means that I get spirits from this. So these 2 on the field will just trigger each other constantly and keep giving me multiple spirits each turn, which is pretty solid. Now we get into some of the fun things. Because that's pretty much... Is there one more combo, actually, I wanted to talk about first? I think there was. 1 second. Let me flip through this and find it. Pretty sure it's in blue, actually, and that's why I don't talk about it much. Yeah, okay. There is one more combo I wanted to show you guys, actually, before we get into the fun stuff. The other thing I'm running in this deck, to add to the reanimator idea that I was talking about, is I wanted to lower costs as much as possible, and also do fun things from the graveyard. So, I am running Carador Ghost Chieftain. He costs 1 less to cast for each creature in my graveyard, which is awesome. And once during each of my turns, I can cast a creature from my graveyard. In addition to him, I'm running Patrician Geist, which gives all my spirits +1/+1, and whenever I cast a spirit from a spell from the graveyard, it costs 1 less. Plus he has flying. And in addition to that, I'm also running Hinata, Dawn Crowned, 4/4 Flying Trample. All my spells will cost 1 less to cast for each target, and my opponent's spells will cost 1 to cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. So basically, a lot of my instants are going to be cheaper, and sorceries are going to be cheaper, which is awesome. I'm not sure if that applies to this ability per se. I don't think it does, but if it does, that's awesome. So that's why I'm kind of putting it here as a combo potentially. But anyways, that is the other thing I'm doing. Again, with those 2 triggering their stuff, that's going to trigger the elephant and just get me more spirits on board. Plus, that's a great way to get all the stuff that goes back into my graveyard when the tokens disappear from this guy's effect. Pretty cool. Alright, now we're getting into the beefy boys. We got Okagachi Vengeful Kami. This is actually probably one of my favorite cards, and this was definitely the runner-up for Commander. 6/6 big boy, but it costs 6 to put into play, which is the reason why I ultimately decided not to play him. because I wanted something that I'd be able to play at least 2 or 3 times in the game. And with the mana value I have, and even the artifacts I have, I figure him getting up to 10 on the 3rd try is going to be pretty steep. But whenever he deals combat damage to a player, if that player attacked during their last turn, I get to exile a non-land permanent that player controls. So basically this is like my ultimate defense creature. As long as you don't attack me, I don't attack you back with this thing and make you lose something that you like. So it's really great for politicking. This is actually a card that you saw in the deck the other day, and yes, I did buy that deck specifically to get one of these cards for this deck, and I had one already which I'm putting into my Dragons deck. So both of those decks are going to have a pretty beefy, awesome, cool card in them, which I'm pretty happy about. Next, Lorehold Apprentice. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell until end of turn, all your creatures that are spirits get that lightning ability that I was showing you guys earlier. So basically, I'm putting this into this deck specifically because whenever I play an instant or sorcery spell, I can then tap all my boys to do 1 damage to any target, or to each opponent, sorry. And then that enchantment that I was running will untap them all at the beginning of the next person's untap step so that I can block. Great way to kind of finish everybody off if I can get that onto the board and protect it. I've got both Ellis, Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim, and Aili, Evil Pilgrim. I like both these cards, and I felt that they were great for this deck. This one, of course, gets you life whenever something comes into play, and whenever something you control dies, everybody loses a life. So with all my spirits coming in and out, in and out, in and out, I'm constantly going to be gaining a life every time somebody kills something as long as this guy's on the field. And it's not a token. And everybody will be losing a life because it also left the battlefield, which is pretty cool. And then this one lets me sacrifice creatures if I want to gain life equal to their toughness. And if I sacrifice another creature and I have at least 10 or more life, I can exile a non-land permanent. Pretty solid effects. Definitely great in terms of all the stuff that I'm trying to do in terms of gaining life and things so far in this deck. And, yeah. Continuing on, just in case that one enchantment gets destroyed, I do have also Tori de Avenant, Fury Rider. Vigilance Trample. Whenever it attacks, all my other attacking creatures I control get +1/+1 until end of turn. And then all my red attacking creatures I control get Trample, and all my white attacking creatures get untapped. So basically, if I cannot pull off the damage ability on the Apprentice, I can always attack with a Spirit Army that flies. Hopefully evasion will give me some advantage there. And then untap everything, assuming this survives. And even if it doesn't survive, this will put this back into play, and I assume that because it has the same name, it probably would trigger, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, Aaron Benalia's Ruin, Menace, plus a great way to put +1/+1 counters on creatures just by sacrificing things. Again, I'm hoping to get a whole bunch of 1/1 creatures on the battlefield, and then I can just sacrifice one of them to this guy and give them all +1/+1. Alicia, Who Laughs at Fate, is just an insanely fun card to put into this deck. First strike, whenever it attacks, I put a +1/+1 counter on it, and at the beginning of my end step, if I attack this turn, I can return a creature card with mana value less than or equal to this thing's power from my graveyard to the battlefield. So if one of my combo pieces gets knocked out, it's a great way for me to get it back out on the same turn that I attack with it, assuming that this also doesn't die. Return Pass Caller, Flying. Basically, this one's in here mostly because when it enters the battlefield, I get to return a spirit, an instant, or a sorcery from my graveyard to the hand. It costs a lot to put into play, don't get me wrong, I recognize that, which is kind of the reason I wavered on putting this in. But the fact that it will die and then trigger with this, which will then put another copy out, which will then give me another chance to get something else out, it's just value, value, value. Restless Night is another one that's just going to love all the stuff that's going on with my graveyard. Whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under my control, if that creature entered from the graveyard, or if I cast it from the graveyard, I put a +1/+1 counter on this. So basically, if I keep bringing creatures back from the graveyard using the Parador, I get to keep putting +1/+1 counters on this, and the fact that it has flying and lifelink just means that I'm going to keep increasing my life a bunch, with it, which will then help me with Alia, etc., etc. This guy I've been wanting to put into a deck for the longest time, and I couldn't fit him into anything, and I decided I'm pushing him in here regardless of the fact that he costs 4 because he is hilarious. I pay a black, I sacrifice him, target player loses a life, I gain a life. Whenever I play a multicolored spell, I can put this thing from my graveyard into my hand. So basically, I put this one out, I sacrifice it, I trigger this, I get a token copy of it, I sacrifice the token, this goes back to my graveyard, I play a multicolored spell, it goes back to my hand, and I get to keep doing damage constantly for cheap. I put a Cryptghast in here because why the hell not? All my swamps will tap for double, and Extort is just a great thing to do some more damage to people. Myosian of Night's Reach is insane. It enters with a Divinity counter, and whenever it has the Divinity counter on it, it has Indestructible. And then I can choose to remove that Divinity counter, and each opponent will discard their whole hand. So, that is just an insanely wicked card to play. And again, if it dies, I get to put another one in, and basically, as long as it can protect this, my entire board will just keep refreshing itself, and it's awesome. And I have a few things to protect it, but mainly the job of protecting it is definitely the commander's job, which we'll get to in a minute. Grey Host Reinforcements, Flying Ward 3, when this thing enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard, put a number of +1/+1 counters onto this thing equal to that the number of creatures exiled this way. Just a big beefy boy when he gets put in late in the game, and essentially that's why he's there. Nimbus of the Urn, I like this one because whenever it attacks, I can tap something, a creature specifically, but still. So I can tap something that could be a really troublesome blocker, and because it's flying, it has evasion, and if I can get enough +1/+1 counters on it, it'll be good. Plus, again, trigger with this. Keep it into play constantly. Myosian of the Blooming Dawn is the other Myosian I have in here. I do own a third Myosian, which is the blue one, but I've decided I'm not putting it in this deck. I'm going to probably put it into my blue deck when I revamp that at some point in the near future. Not sure when. I still have 2 decks that I want to revamp now, plus the dragon deck to build before I move on to the next wave of stuff. In the meantime, though, this enters with an Indestructible counter on it if I cast it from my hand. Did the black one do that too? Yeah, if you cast it from your hand. So I won't get the Indestructible counter on it when it enters the second time, unfortunately, from the Ghost Forge, but I will be able to get it back into my hand, potentially, from the graveyard, and in that case, replay it to get the Indestructible counter on the second time that way. This one, though, when you remove the Indestructible counter from it, it will create a 1/1 color spirit creature token for each permanent you control. So all your lands will give you a spirit, all your other creatures give you spirits, your enchantments, your artifacts. It's just craziness. And then we get to my closing card for the game, because, you know, why wouldn't you want to put this into a spirit deck? Moonshaker Cavalry. This actually reminds me a lot of the Lord of the Rings spirit army that goes in and just wipes everybody out in Return of the King. So flying, when this thing enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So basically, you're not going to be attacking with that this turn unless you have a way to give it haste, which, by the way, gives all my spirits haste. I forgot about that part too, in case I forgot to keep mentioning it. All my spirits will have +1/+1 trample and haste, so everything that comes back as a copy just gets to be bigger and have extra effects. So yeah, this thing will definitely be able to attack the turn it comes in, and all my other stuff is just going to be overwhelmingly powerful. Linden, the Steadfast Queen, she is not a spirit, but she's in here for one specific reason, and it's not the vigilance, it's because whenever a white creature I control attacks, I gain a life. So basically, all my spirits are... I have 3/2 red-white spirits in this deck, I have 1/1 spirit tokens in this deck, and I have white and black spirit tokens in this deck. The only ones that don't have color are the ones that get made by this guy. Otherwise, they all have white in them at least. So all those spirits will be giving me life whenever they attack. Drogskull Reaver is insane. He costs a bunch to put into play, but I could not choose not to include him, even though he has a blue in his cost. Flying, Double Strike, Lifelink, and whenever I gain life, I draw a card. I do not know if that means each instance, so from this, would that trigger me drawing my entire deck? Possibly? And if it does, that's a dangerous combo to put on the field at the same time, but we'll see how it goes. Maleficent, Restless Revenant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each spirit I control, which is great, so he could basically just cost 2, potentially. If I get him out at the right time, he is flying, and whenever he or another non-token spirit I control dies or deals combat damage to a player, I get to make a white spirit creature token. So, just a great way to, again, all the ones that I'm getting from this are tokens, don't get me wrong, but all the original ones that are coming into play will all trigger him. Tormented Soul is a really cheap one that I wanted to include because it's unblockable, so I can just constantly swing with that and at least deal 1 damage. Plus I can beef it up more with Ghostforge, of course. And the really cool thing about Ghostforge is it doesn't specify that the card that dies has to be a non-spirit token. It just has to be a non-token creature. So all my spirits get to come back as spirits, but they're more with the same amount of power that they had the first time, but they also come back with Trample and Haste. Nope, actually they would still have Trample and Haste. They just come back as the same thing over and over again, which is awesome. Kami of Ancient Laws in here just to get rid of enchantments in case somebody's running something that's particularly dangerous. And again, I can bring it back over and over and over and over again. Fuming Effigy, ultimately with all the stuff that I'm exiling from my graveyard and bringing back into my graveyard constantly, I figured why not? Deals 1 damage to each opponent, plus another thing that can just come back over and over again with Ghostforge. Stonebound Mentor, whenever 1 or more cards leave my graveyard, I get to scry 1. Oh, I forgot, that was the other part of the combo. So whenever I'm exiling things with the 2 elephants, they trigger this guy, and I get to scry 1 on the top of my deck and see what's coming up too. I will go put that back over here with the combo pieces where it belongs. The Quintorius, Triplets, and Stoneboard Mentor. I included the Seigu Wildling because it's just another great way to get basic lands that I need if I'm struggling to find a specific color. The chances of me putting it into play as a dragon are pretty slim, to be perfectly honest, but I do like the fact that when it comes into play, I gain 3 life. So when it dies and I get a new one, I'm going to gain 3 life. When it goes into my graveyard and I bring it back, I'm going to gain 3 life, etc., etc. Alharu, Solemn Ritualist, is great because he puts a couple +1/+1 counters on creatures, which is great. Whenever a creature that has a +1/+1 counter on it dies, I get to create a spirit creature token with flying. So the guy that's making me get all the tokens that we were talking about earlier, the +1/+1 tokens, where is he? This guy. He triggers that, and then this guy will let all those creatures have spirits come into play in addition to the spirits that Ghostforge makes. And finally, Gallows Warden, flying, other spirit creatures I control get +0/+1. It's just a great way to give something an extra beef buff. I have like 3 or 4 things that give buffs to spirits in this deck so far, and I just thought, why not give them a little bit of extra toughness so that the tokens can hopefully survive combat. That brings me to the end of this, and our final reveal is the Commander. Have you guessed it? If you did, congrats. If not, don't worry. I had never heard of this card before, and I started looking for cards that I could possibly play, and it is Kyodai, Soul of Kamigawa. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to run all the Kamigawa lands, because I thought that just felt fitting for him. I really wish I had a mountain. I don't have a mountain in Kamigawa yet, unfortunately. I might try to find one, though, somewhere. But anyways, it has flash, so I can play it at any time. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, another permanent I control gains indestructible for as long as I control him. So the goal is to put him into play once this guy's into play, protect him. If this dies, it leaves the field. He makes a copy. The copy comes in, protects him, etc., etc. I can cast it from my graveyard using the one guy for cheap. I'm not sure if I can cast it at flash speed or whether I'd have to cast it at regular speed. Probably regular speed using his ability, but let me double check that. Does it say on each of my turns, or does it say per turn? Because if it says per turn, I could probably cast it at flash speed. Where are you, guy? You're over here somewhere. Card order. Each of my turns, yeah, so no. But still, I can even cast it from the command zone for a little cheaper than the other one that I originally was considering as a commander. And the other thing that's cool about Kyodai is I can pay Wooburg and give him +5/+5 until end of turn, so he becomes an 8/8 with flying. On top of all the other buffs that he's getting, he could end up being like a 14/14 potentially. No, wait, how much could he be? If everything that's on the field that can give buffs, we're giving buffs to him, he could potentially get up to 12. He could be a 12/12 flyer, so I could kill people in 2 turns with him. So again, just craziness that Wizards came up with such an interesting card, and I love the fact that it lets me protect my entire combo, essentially. Oathbreaker protects himself with the phasing thing, so as long as it's not like a combat thing, he's going to phase out and he won't be hurt, and Kyodai can protect my commander. And again, if Kyodai gets targeted, he phases out. Now, unfortunately, if he phases out, this will lose its indestructibleness for the turn, but I have ways to get it back. So the trick is getting this into my hand in the early going, which I do not have any like creature tutors or anything per se in this deck. Mostly because I did not want to make it too powerful. I'm thinking running this bracket 3. As far as I know, I don't have any game changers in it, so it could potentially run bracket 2. But until I play it, I don't really want to say that it's like bracket 2 worthy, because a lot of these things do some pretty powerful stuff. I figure it's probably more of a bracket 3 deck. Anyways, that's all I have for you today on Super Deck Sunday. Much love to you all from me. Take care. Comment about wishing the pug well. He's sad and not feeling well. Poor baby. Bye, humans.